Hello again, welcome to Ask a Woman, which is our new digital series talking to prominent women in their fields, finding out what makes them tick and what is making the headlines in their lives. Well, our guest today is in the teeth of a full-blown political crisis, which is, of course, Brexit. The most prominent woman on Labour's front bench. She's been Shadow Foreign Secretary since 2016 and the bookie's favourite, apparently, to take over from Jeremy Corbyn as Labour leader whenever that time might come. She's been an MP since 2005 and led an extraordinarily varied, interesting life before then, 20 years as a human rights barrister, and has had some notable highs and lows in the course of all of that and since she went into Parliament. Emily Thornberry, great to see you. What a moment to be sitting on the sofa talking to you. I mean, these are really tense times, aren't they?
It's really tough. It's really tough at the moment, I think. It's really tough to try to work out what's going to happen next. We've had 2.5 years of what I would just say the faffing around from the government, and we're now running out of time. We're running out of time, and we don't seem to have, there doesn't seem to be any plan. And it's really worrying. It is really worrying, you know. We've been clear with them. You know, if they want to have, it looks like she's going for this vote. Everybody says that she's going to lose it. And quite frankly, you know, all that she's offering us, we think, is, you know, you've got a choice. You can either get on a bridge to nowhere or you can fall off a cliff. And we're not agreeing to it. We're just not having it. We will vote against it. And if she thinks that she can just put the vote in and then kind of come back a couple of weeks later and just put the vote in front of us again, you know, we're not budging. We're not going to have it. We're not going to vote for this. And they need to understand that.
OK, we'll unpick that in a few moments. But just first of all, I mean, there does seem to be a sense outside. You know, if you just talk to people who are outside of the bubble that a lot of us sometimes have to move in with this, you know, people have a sort of admiration for her doggedness and her determination through this. And what admirable qualities do you think she's got?
Yes, I think that she's determined, and I feel sorry for her. But I don't think really feeling sorry for your Prime Minister is a very good look. I think in the end what's important is that you need to be able to be a proper leader. You need to have a clear path of where you're going and bring people with you. And she doesn't have that. She doesn't seem to have those qualities. And I mean, I agree with her. She's a feminist. I agree with her on that. I've worked with her in the past. Both of us want there to be a statue of Emily Wilding-Davison in Parliament, for example. We've campaigned on that together. But it has to be more than that. If you're going to be Prime Minister, you have to be able to lead.
But you have to be dogged and you have to be determined. And she, you know, whatever you think of the strategy, when you think of the sort of slings and arrows that she's been bombarded with from, you know, people close to her in her own party, you must have there must be a sort of empathy from a female point of view.
There is that, but as I say, it isn't enough. You know, it isn't enough to be dogged. You do have to have a proper strategy and you have to bring people with you. And she doesn't seem to be able to do that. And sometimes you can be so dogged that you can actually end up just being a bit blind. I don't know if this is, you know, she always talks about, you know, being quite pleased of being called a bloody difficult woman, you know.
You'd be proud to be called a bloody difficult woman, wouldn't you?
And I am. I mean, I know I am. But there are times when I know that if it's not going anywhere, then you have to stop and you have to reconsider. You have to regroup and work out. You know, you have to say, right, I want to get here. Now, how am I going to get here? You can't just go, I'm determined to go this way. And it doesn't matter. I don't care what people say. I'm going this way. And people go, but you want to get over here. No, I'm determined. I'm going over this way. You know, really.
OK, so we've got this clock ticking down to December the 11th vote. If that deal is voted down, which is where we seem to be heading, and the consequences are a no-deal Brexit, are you prepared to have that on your conscience?
The consequences are not a no-deal Brexit. And this is a false choice. And when we said that we wanted to have a meaningful vote...
It is a possible consequence of this, whatever you might argue.
Yeah, but we're not going to agree to a no-deal Brexit. This is not going to happen.
How is it not going to happen?
Well, this is the challenge. I mean, frankly, you know, if she can't do it, if she can't get us out of the European Union without no deal, with just with no deal, then she should have a general election. We should have another government because we can sort something out. We cannot allow this to happen to our country.
But you know the figures are not against you when you're arguing for a second general election. You know that. I mean, unless you can tell me something that that we haven't worked out already, that the DUP is suddenly going to fall in alongside you. You know you're not going to get it.
But I think we also shouldn't underestimate what effect it has on a government when it loses a major vote. And this couldn't be a bigger vote. And so just in terms of the
would come over to your side.
No. What I'm saying is the psychology. It's like a balloon that gets its air taken out of it. If they lose the biggest decision that we have to make as a country since the Second World War, and they lose it by, doesn't matter, 4, 40, 200, doesn't matter. If they lose it, then the question then is, are they really determined to carry on driving us over the cliff? Do they think that the public will ever forgive them for this?
She has the option, of course, of coming back, but you have to know that you could call that no confidence vote and be in a position to be looking at a second general election. You cannot say that. You know you can't.
No, I think that we can talk about the Fixed Term Parliament Act until the cows come home.
Yeah.
But the politics are that if she can't govern, there has to be another government, and that is what we stick to.
OK, minority government then, you hook up with the SNP. Is that possible?
Anything, frankly, at the moment.
So you wouldn't rule out Labour in a minority government working with the SNP?
When there was talk of a minority government during the last general election, what we said was that we would run a minority government and we would put our budget and we would say, you want to vote for it or don't you want to vote for it? But that wouldn't be a coalition. No, absolutely. That would be this is who we are, this is what we stand for, you either vote for us or you don't.
So you're not ruling that out?
No, so what I'm saying is that what we've always said in the past is no coalitions. If we're in a minority government, we're a minority government. And frankly, it would be up to the Nats to say, oh, we didn't vote for Labour, therefore the Tories have come back in again, and let them face their electorate,
so not a formal coalition then, certainly. But the support of the SNP, you could see that happening.
We would assume that the SNP would support us on a deal that we would be able to come back with. We would assume the Liberals would. We would assume that we would get that support. And frankly, we would be able, I think, to come back with a deal which was being in a permanent customs union, being close to the single market and having a common.
So have you have talks gone on with Nicola Sturgeon on that basis?
Yes or no? We have talks with the other political parties, and I can't really go into the details. So obviously, we talk to everybody, and unfortunately, the ones who we're not able to talk to are the Tories, who we have offered several times to talk to.
So minority government is a possibility here with the support of the SNP, and there are some talks.
If there's a general election, I think that we actually will win a majority government. I really do.
Yes, but we're looking at how you'd get through from this. Yeah. OK. If that doesn't work, inevitable second referendum. John McDonnell used those words yesterday.
Well, it goes in stages. So we vote against the deal because it doesn't meet our tests. It's then up to the government to take the initiative as to what it is that they want to do next. But we would say in those circumstances there should be a general election. We would push for that. We would put everything into trying to make sure that we get a general election because we believe that we can get a proper deal. If we don't get that, then all options are on the table. No options are off the table. And obviously one of those options is a popular vote.
Is that one that you would support and that you would push for?
I think that we need to reassess the situation depending on where we are and what happens. There are so many.
Do you like the idea of it or not?
I like the idea of us remaining in the European Union. I mean, I voted and campaigned to remain in the European Union, but I'm a Democrat more than anything else. And the people, we had a referendum, the people spoke. I think it's our duty to do as we're told. I think that if there was if public opinion had really changed and there was sort of 70% of the public were now in favour of remaining in the European Union, it would be a very different situation.
Yeah, but
they haven't changed that much.
But this is a party. Your leader makes a big thing of listening to the grassroots members. You know that's where they're at. You know that's what they're pushing for. Why would you be resistant to it?
We have to rule. We have to govern on behalf of the whole country. This is really important that we do it. We kind of feel that we've got the Tories who've picked one side and the Liberals who've picked another, and we really have been trying to negotiate a careful path where we pull people together.
You can be.
We're
yes,
in
but
such a divided world, and
we
it's
are,
just.
but you could call it careful, or you could call it ambiguous, couldn't you? I suppose, and actually, you could say at that point, a general election is not possible. Therefore, the next strategy very clearly is a second referendum.
Well, there are others. There are other possibilities. I mean, there is we call for a general election. We don't get a general election. They change leaders. Who knows? I mean, they might do that, okay. And then we might end up with a hard Brexiteer. So honestly, there are so many possibilities.
Sure, but if and you're going to have to make some pretty quick decisions when the moment comes in a few days' time. If the route is a second referendum, should Remain be on the paper, in your view, as a choice?
There's a debate about this because...
What do you think?
Well, I think Remain should be one of the options, but then the question is, can you have a referendum which isn't a binary decision? Can you have a referendum that has like 3 options? Would you then have a transferable vote? Would that be allowed? I mean, some people say that there should be Remain or Theresa May's thing. But then, what would all the kind of, the hard Brexiteers think about that? They would think they've been disenfranchised because what are they to vote for?
If Remain were on the paper, would you vote Remain?
If the referendum was as it was last time, which was Leave or Remain, I would vote Remain. Of course I would. I think we should stay in. I don't yet know if we're going to have a referendum. If we were to have a referendum, when it would be, what the questions would be. So there are too many.
You could envisage then a referendum whereby another type of deal might be on the table alongside Remain, and you might choose another option.
The trouble is that
I
understand. No, of course, I'm a Remainer, but I'm a Remainer and a Democrat. I'm not going to force our country to do something that our country doesn't want to do, and that was why we had the original referendum. And I do as I'm told. I mean, that in the end, it's hard because I don't agree with the decision that we've made. But we have made a decision as a country, and I actually think that we should have a bit more humility. And should have a bit more deference. People thought very carefully about this and they made up their minds. I don't agree with them, but I will do what I'm told because democracy is more important than anything else. And there are such anti-democratic forces in the world at the moment, Julie. I mean, there really are. You look at the kind of these big, these strong men, Russian interference in this, that and the other, the way in which they're turning their backs on what the people want. It's terrible. And I don't want our country going like that.
But your colleague, the Shadow Brexit Secretary, Keir Starmer, said he would, if there were another referendum, he would vote Remain.
Yeah.
End of. Why do you not find yourself in the same
position? Because I mean, I do agree. Because I do.
You're talking about doing as you're told, but there's not a united voice on this, is there?
There is. If there was a in-out referendum, then we would vote in. We did last time, we would again. But I don't know, and frankly, I don't know whether Keir was asked this, in a referendum where there are a multiplicity of potential questions, what would your vote be? To which the answer is, tell me what the questions are. And that's all I'm saying to you.
But for some avid Remainers, if Remain is on the paper, it sort of doesn't matter what else is on there.
I hear you. Yeah.
And you don't class yourself as that anymore?
Well, I think that we're better off in the European Union. But I think...
Just nail your colours to the mast.
How much more do I have to say? I think we're better off in the European Union. I'm nailing my colours to the mast.
Why do you think your leader, Jeremy Corbyn, who says that he doesn't think you can stop Brexit, won't say which way he would vote? Is it
It's always difficult when people say, when Jeremy says this, what does he mean? And when Jeremy says this, what does he think?
Well, they're trying to work out.
Well, it's better to ask Jeremy. Ask Jeremy.
Well, you
well, I can tell you that what our policy is, and our policy is an agreed policy, and politics is a team sport, and we have a Brexit subcommittee, and nobody knows about it because it doesn't leak, and we don't have big rows. We sit around and we talk about things, and we thrash out what our policy is.
Okay. If you get to the point that you could have in your best case scenario, i.e. you take control of the negotiations, Labour, you're already knocking this years down the path, aren't you, on the timetable that could emerge?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how long it would take, given that the Europeans know what it is that we want. We have been consistent. You say we're ambiguous. We're not. We want to be in a customs union, a permanent customs union. We need to be able to look after goods. We need to be able to look after services. We need, therefore, to be close to the single market. And we need to have a common rule book. And that is actually quite a long way away from what Theresa May is negotiating. It gives certainty to everybody. And if we sketch out our future relationship along those lines, then I think that can be probably agreed fairly quickly. Now, how the details of those... Because the thing is, right, it's like... What we're doing at the moment is we're doing the divorce. And then after that, we've got to kind of work out what to do about the car and the kids and the house. And the details are to be organised later. But we need to get through the divorce first. That's what this current crisis is.
Sure.
And as part of that divorce, what we need to do is we need to be able to show the general thrust of what our relationship is going to be. And that's what the Tories... Sorry, hang on a second. Yeah. That's what the Tories can't agree. And that's why we get nonsense from them on this agreement. And that's why we don't get anything which is coherent, consistent, gives anybody some idea. We would be able to negotiate a divorce along the lines that I've said, those three things. And that could happen pretty quickly.
Well, OK, let's unpick that very quickly in a moment. But it was very clear when Theresa May went to Brussels those few days ago with the withdrawal agreement, a very clear message from Brussels saying there is this deal, this is the only negotiated deal on the table. Were they lying?
Well, I mean, they would say that, wouldn't they? As Mandy Rice-Davies said. I mean, it's a bit like, if you go off and buy a motorbike, right? You're going to buy a motorbike and then you pull out and then the next guy comes along to buy the motorbike and the seller says, oh, no, the last guy was going to offer me $1,000. I'm not accepting anything else. That's the only deal in town. Rubbish. No.
So you've had assurances from within the EU that you would absolutely be able to renegotiate on your terms?
The negotiations can be renegotiated if there is a major change, and there would be a major change because there would be a different government with a different attitude and a different set of proposals and, frankly, a united position.
OK, so your aim, in your words, was a British-style free trade agreement based on the rules of the single market, a permanent customs union and a strong single market deal. I mean, let's just look at that issue of a strong single market deal. That involves the 4 freedoms, doesn't it? That involves freedom of movement.
That's why it's not being in the single market, it's a single market deal.
Okay.
That's why it's a British-style leaving.
The EU has made it perfectly clear there is no cherry-picking when it comes to the single market.
That's why it needs to be negotiated. That's what they should have been doing for 2.5 years, and that's not what they've been doing.
The stated position of the EU is that there are 4 freedoms that go with the single market. You cannot have a better deal outside.
No, but we're not saying that we would be in the customs union and in the single market. We're saying we want a single market deal. There have to be some changes, and they are relatively minor, because the majority of it is single market, but there will need to be changes on immigration. They know that. We've said that. And that is where we would need to negotiate. Listen, I don't believe that when people were voting in the referendum that immigration was not a relevant issue. And we have said that we want to have fair rules and manage migration. And we need to be able to talk to the Europeans about that. Now, I'm not going to, with all respect, start saying here on this programme, on this sofa, what our red lines would be in relation to immigration, because we would need to go and negotiate it. But they know. So
you don't have any... What your red lines on immigration are, I mean, as stated in your manifesto, managed migration.
Fair rules and managed migration, yeah.
And yet one of the pillars of the single market, and you're looking for a single market deal, is freedom of movement.
A single market deal not to be in the single market. They know this. We've said this many times to them. They know, they are prepared, they know what we're coming on.
Do you think it's any wonder that people just can't get their heads around where Labour are at on this?
Well, I mean, I think that the truth is that we have been consistent. The leadership team has been clear about what it is that we want. I mean, it was like more than 2 years ago, I did Prime Minister's Questions, and I said the only way to get a soft border in Northern Ireland, is to be in a customs union. I said on this side of the house, this is what we believe. That was over 2 years ago. Unfortunately, the Tories weren't listening. If they were listening, they would have thought, so if we want to get a deal through Parliament, given that half of the Tories want to go one way and half the Tories want to go another way, let us do the sort of deal that Labour is talking about and come back with something that they would be able to agree with. But they haven't listened to us. And we really have been consistent. It is technical, it is detailed, but we do say the same thing again, and I find myself saying the same thing again and again. And
but the bottom line is this could take, the timetable of this could be stretched now. From a vote that happened in 2016, you could be starting at square one.
We're not starting at square one. We know what it is that we want,
Okay.
and we know that most of what we want is entirely acceptable within the European Union. There needs to be some negotiations on immigration.
All right. TV debates between your leader and Theresa May. They can't even agree to be on the same channel. Should this debate be happening with two Remainers?
I think that we should have a debate with the two leaders. You know, it's either going to be, the Prime Minister is either going to be Theresa May or it's going to be Jeremy Corbyn who will be doing the negotiations or leading the negotiations in Europe. And so the two different approaches, it is important that they debate, and there are big differences in our two approaches. And I think it's important for the public to get at this point what the details are and what the differences are. Personally, my bid would be for ITV. It's got a much bigger audience, it's got much bigger reach, and so I think it would be more of an event on ITV.
But people aren't about to vote on it again, are they? Unless you follow through on some of the arguments that we've just gone through, and we end up
Well,
with
we need to have an injection of democracy, and we thought that the injection of democracy would be a meaningful vote. When we passed the meaningful vote, it was like the only thing that we managed to get through the legislation, right? It was our only amendment. But we thought actually this was really important. It did give the Parliament a say. Now, giving Parliament a say is not giving Parliament a great big rubber stamp and telling Parliament, you either got this or you got nothing. That's not a meaningful vote. We said we wanted to have it at a time where it would give us sufficient time if she came back with a bit of nonsense, which she has, to then send her back and say, look, you really do need to negotiate properly. And she's leaving it until the very last minute, and it's like watching a car in slow motion driving towards a wall. And it's frightening.
If you get your wish and if you see your leader installed in number 10, you could be the next Foreign Secretary.
Yeah.
Would our relationship be better or worse with the US as a consequence, do you think?
I think that it would probably be better because we'd have difficulties with Donald Trump. Everybody's got difficulties.
Well, you called him an asteroid of awfulness.
Well, he is an asteroid of awfulness.
Well, would you say it to his face?
Of course I would. I wouldn't let anybody push me around, to be honest. I wouldn't. I don't.
You would call Donald Trump an asteroid of awfulness.
I don't like bullies. I don't like people who throw their weight around. I think that there's no point in holding his hand, fawning over him, wheeling out the Queen, the Grenadier Guards, the red carpet, taking him to Churchill's birthplace. I mean, how's that gone? He continues to walk all over us and treat us with contempt. That's not right. I mean, look at the way he is behaving. America first. Poor Theresa May. She's done everything she can. And then he goes and sides with her enemies within the Tory party. I mean, really, so clearly that doesn't work. So frankly, I think you have to stand up to him. But also, you've got to work around him. So you've got to work.
There we go again. You've got to work round him.
You've got to work round him.
Where are the ways in which?
Well, part of the problem, obviously, is that the permanent, the big players that you would normally get around a president keep changing. So that's hard.
So you really, you haven't really got any contact with that administration at any.
I've got contact with people in the Senate and in Congress, and when we went out to the States recently, we spent quite a lot of time talking to senators and Congress people, and they want us. They want us to stay with them. They're going through a really hard time, and they will remember who their friends are, and we are their friends. We have strong links with America. They are going through a difficult time at the moment with this irascible, unpredictable, selfish president, and who tries to divide their country. And I hope from the bottom of my heart that he will be gone in a couple of years.
You talked about pursuing an ethical foreign policy.
Yes.
Talked about it in the light of Robin Cook, for example. Yemen in particular, of course, is something that you've spoken out about a lot recently. The real politics very different. Your stated view is stopping arms sales to Saudi over this Yemen crisis. Are you prepared to do that in the face of thousands of job losses potentially from the arms industry in this country?
To be absolutely precise about it, it's to stop arms sales to Saudi Arabia that they can use in the war in Yemen. Mm-hmm. And that's
what I said, related to the Yemen crisis.
And so it's the aeroplanes and it's the bombs which they drop from the aeroplanes. And it's international law and it's our local domestic law that we should not sell arms to someone who will use them for the internal repression of their citizens, but also for attacking civilians in other countries. If there is a chance that might happen, there has been more than a chance that would happen. We have seen evidence of it happening. They bomb weddings and funerals. They bomb milk plants. They bomb agricultural land. They bomb people digging a well, and then they come back and they bomb them some more. This is not random bombing. This is precision bombing. This is good kit. We sold it to them.
But it is worth sacrificing jobs over, fundamentally, in the end.
In the end, nobody in the arms industry wants to make arms that will be sold, that will be used against innocent women and children. They don't. They want to be able to make arms that people can use to defend themselves, but they do not want those arms to be sold in breach of the law. And I think
even in that circumstance, it's just...
So, I mean, the counter-argument of what you're saying is shouldn't we be encouraging a lot more wars so that we can sell arms all over the place?
No, it's not absolutely that. I'm just asking, because given that there are people who are working in those industries who your MPs will represent, and you have to turn to them and say, I'm sorry, this is the consequence. And
again, it has been our policy for more than 2.5 years, and BA Systems and various other businesses do know this is Labour's policy and do know that unless there is a proper peace in Yemen and unless there is an independent investigation of what the Saudis have been doing in their bombing campaign, we will come in with a policy of no longer selling them the planes and the bombs. And so will and the way things are going in the United States at the moment, that's going to happen in America too.
We need to talk about the personal stuff. We always do this with this, and we've got so much we needed to cram in on this.
Yeah, sorry.
But people... sorry, it's me asking the questions, it's fine. But, you're sort of an extraordinary mixture for the Labour Party, aren't you? I mean, you are absolutely part of what one might call the elite Labour set, the Islington Labour set, human rights barrister, never liked defining women ever by the people they're married to.
Yeah.
Married to a High Court judge.
Yeah.
Father worked for the UN, but really tough old times when you were very little with your parents separated.
Yeah.
How did that mark you?
I've got a chip on both of my shoulders. I've probably got a few chips on both my shoulders. It kind of gives me my balance. I had a hard time. My father kind of just disappeared, and so we ran out of money. We ran out of everything really. The bailiffs kept coming round. The bailiffs in the end threw us out. People would give us food parcels and bags of clothes, and we ended up going to a big council estate on the edge of Guildford. We had been in this kind of this nice family house up the hill in Guildford. So we moved on to council estate, and it was hard for my mum because there wasn't really any childcare. She had kids of 7, 5 and 3 when my dad left, so she couldn't really work, and it was really difficult. And then she started working again. We were quite disturbed kids. All of us failed our 11 plus. I went to the local secondary modern. Had to go through I didn't have to, but you could either walk kind of a mile round or you went through the hole in the fence to get back onto the estate.
God, we used to do that for school, round the back through the bush.
But there was a gang of girls the leader of whom I had been friends with and I'd fallen out with, and I used to get beaten up on the way back, and it was tough. It was a tough old life. And the expectations on us were very low. The school didn't expect us to do well. I was only allowed I had to do 6 O-levels. 2 of them had to be in technical subjects. They weren't expecting you to do A-levels. They weren't expecting you to get to university. So there was this kind of talking down. My careers teacher said to me that when I asked him what I could do with my life, he said that I could always go and visit people in prison, which I did. But as a criminal barrister, I don't think he was thinking of that. So there was lots of that. We were kind of wild kids, really. And my mum found it quite difficult to cope.
But a father who came on and off the scene.
And then Dad would sweep in.
And he's a senior lawyer in the United Nations. It's a very different world. So there was an element in your life.
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And there was this kind of expectation. So I have this kind of weird mixture in my background. So Dad would sweep in and say, we're going to Africa. I'd only been on a day trip to Boulogne, and now I'm going to Africa. So that was odd, it was challenging, and that was kind of, in a way, I suppose, good for me. I mean, it made me quite strong, but it also gave me a breadth of experience. I know about a lot of different types of people's lives because I've lived it. And that makes me, I think, kind of the politician that I am. And it's good. I'm not ashamed of it. It's all right. It's fine.
Because, it's difficult, isn't it, trying to read where you're at, because It's an extraordinary story to hear of a politician and how they arrived to where they are. And it's very easy to concertina, 20 years working as a human rights barrister. But, you know, that the tweet, the Rochester tweet of the house with the flags and the white van that got you sacked, the people just can't quite read which bit of Labour you are and are from and you're standing for. It was looked like that moment of snobbery that people were deeply uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
Cost you your job.
Well, I was taking a series of photographs at the Rochester by-election. I mean, and whenever I'm out campaigning, I do take, you look on my Twitter feed or my Instagram, I do take lots of photos. And so I took 4 or 5 at Rochester, and one of them was of a man's house who'd, like, I don't know, the World Cup had been like 6 months before or something, and his house was kind of covered in England flags. So I took a photo of that, along with a whole lot of other ones, and I put image from Rochester. You know. And then people, of course, I mean, of all the things that people said, I think the kind of allegation that I was sneering at people or I was looking down on people kind of was probably the one that hurt, because, I mean, my house was like that. I was brought up on, a house about that age.
But your house isn't like that now, is it?
No, it's not like that now. But, I mean, but my brother's a builder. I mean, you know, it's all...
So that was
nonsense.
Tough. That was
no, it's nonsense.
Well, it's nonsense, but those you know as well as anybody because of it that those messages matter. Don't you?
Yeah, no,
Actually,
I understand that, but it's...
Did you sort of go home and just sort of stare at the kitchen table and think, oh?
No, to be honest with you, I was out campaigning and my phone was kind of going crazy, and I was knocking on doors, so I just carried on knocking on doors, and I just didn't quite twig what was, you know, there was this massive hullabaloo happening. And then I went to a parents' evening. So I went straight from campaigning to the parents' evening, and on my way, Ed rang me, Ed Miliband, and I thought, oh, God, at that point I began to realise that I was in serious trouble. Anyway, I went off to the parents' evening, and I came back, and it seemed to have got worse. And so now he's saying to me, Emily, I think you're going to have to resign. And I go, what? Anyway, you know, I'm not going to get in the way of the Labour Party. You know, if I'm a liability to the Labour Party, I will resign. I'm not going to... Nobody is bigger than the Labour Party. We are a great historic movement. The only way you can get progress in Britain is through the Labour Party, and I genuinely believe that, and I'm not going to get in the way.
So why hasn't it had a woman as leader yet, do you think?
I think it's been circumstances.
It's not, though, is it, fundamentally?
Well, I think the party has changed a lot over the last few years. Actually, I think there has been a feminisation of the Labour Party. I think there's been a challenge going on, which is the all-women shortlists. So all-women shortlists for selecting an MP. And it's the one time when members can actually have a bit of power, and they're the ones who decide who their candidate for MP is. And we've been telling them, you have to select a woman, and only a woman. You've been having all male shortlists all these years. Now you have to have female, and that debate has happened within the party. And we've now got 45% of MPs are women.
But it takes. I mean,
it does take a while.
It does take a while, but the Tories have managed it.
No, but we are. I think that we are much more from the grassroots up. We've got many more women councillors. We've got 45% of our MPs are women. You know, half of the shadow cabinet are women. It's like a wave going up through the Labour Party.
What would it mean to have a woman leading Labour? What difference would it make, apart from the symbolic? What could a woman like Emily Thornberry bring to the leadership of the Labour Party?
Well, I mean, what I want to do is bring leadership to the Foreign Office, actually. That's really what I want to do. And there are qualities that I have as a woman. No, listen, I have been shadowing Boris Johnson, right? And what does he do? He spends all his time thinking about the next job and not thinking about the job he's doing at the moment. And you won't get any other job if you don't do the job you're doing at the moment well. And he's learnt that. He was, frankly, the worst Foreign Secretary we've ever had. You know, that's not the way to be. I want to be a really good Foreign Secretary. I want to be able to bring Britain back into the world and for us to be a respected country again. That is ambitious. It takes leadership. And that's what I want to do.
And the step on from that? It must be in your list of things. Emily Thornberry's big list of things to do.
I work in the moment. I do day by day, and I try every day to do my job as well as I can. What I have been given is a huge honour. Representing my constituency, but being Shadow Foreign Secretary is a heck of a responsibility, and I'm really proud to do it. And I'm just going to do it well. Let's see what happens next, right?
Two more questions, really. But I'm really interested in the fact that, there felt like there was a moment, whether you look at America, in other situations where things were shifting for women in politics. Suddenly we've ended up with strongmen politics, Trump, Putin, Erdogan, look at Brazil. Just at the point at which a lot of women our sort of age thought things might be shifting.
Yeah.
And suddenly we've got a horizon with these male, very particular type of male politician on it.
Yeah.
How is that? I mean, in a little snapshot, what's your take on that?
Yes, I think that it is of a moment, though. I don't think it's going to last. I think that I went to speak to Emily's List, and they give money to help women candidates at all levels, right? And they told me that they were overwhelmed with women who suddenly decided they were going to stand for politics, because if that was our president, I'm going to stand as dog catcher or for the school, whatever. But all the way up to senators. And suddenly I think they had 47,000 people applied. Could you give me some money for my campaign? And you saw with the midterm elections, more than 100 women elected, but also all kinds of women, young women, Muslim women, and I think that there will be a pushback. There's certainly strong men around the world who are modelling themselves on Donald Trump. So that's why I hope from the bottom of my heart that in 2 years' time he's gone. When the next elections happen, that he's gone.
By far from guaranteed where we're at this point.
Of course it's
by
not guaranteed.
Far from guaranteed at this point.
But I think this kind of politics of division will run itself out. In the end, he's only playing to his base, and his base is not enough to get him re-elected. He's the only president who's not had a ratings over 50%. So since polling began, he's still under 50%, even when he's doing well. So I don't think the politics of division in the end are sufficient to get you re-elected. There has to be some hope and there has to be some vision. He doesn't have either.
OK, covered a lot of turf. We are asking all of our guests on Ask a Woman about the 3 women that they would have around their dinner table. It's one of those sort of chestnuts, really, isn't it? What would be on the table and who'd be around it? 3 women.
Are they going to be alive or?
Whatever you like.
I think I am who I am because of my mum and my grandmothers. I come from a line of strong women, and they're all dead, both my nans and my mum, and I really miss them. And if I had a chance, just one more time, to have a meal with them in Parliament, and I could show them what I was doing, that would be fab. That's
really interesting, because Claire Patak said the same thing, that she would have her grandmother at the table. And it's it's amazing, because there's a sort of array of big-name women. But you're in the space where we've had people say, actually, get my mum here, get my...
Yeah,
it's quite a big deal for women.
Yeah, somehow. I think that's right. You know that it's quite common for women to sound like their mothers, much more common than it is for boys to sound like their dads. Or there's something about the way that we hear each other when we're young, and actually now, when I'm on TV, my mum's friends are quite elderly, and sometimes I'll get phone calls from them when I've been on TV or whatever, and they say, "Oh, well done, Sally," and I think it's because we're so similar. I've become my mother. What can I tell you?
Quite emotional talking about it.
Yeah, no, I still talk to her every day. It's ridiculous. She's been dead nearly 10 years. I miss her very much.
What do you say?
But there are moments when things are happening and I just say, I just stop and just say, well, I don't know, Mum, what do you think? No? Yeah. No, I do. And then if my kids are doing things and I'm proud of them, I say, I wish you could see this. No. Yeah, no, I do.
Do you get sort of reassurance from thinking that you're able to still connect with her then in some way?
I've got bits of her jewellery which I wear at important times. So I do get reassurance. Yeah, I do. I feel like I'm doing what she'd want me to do. And sometimes some things that she wouldn't agree with, but I'm still my own person. But on the whole, I think she'd be proud of me, and she would know more than anyone else how tough it's been.
And it has been tough.
Of course, yeah.
So
But
no
it's been
big.
great.
It's been great.
It's
No
been
big
great.
names. So there would be no big names. There would be family people around your table.
Those three. I'm not pushing any of those three off. Good Lord. You know, I mean, my Irish grandmother wouldn't be taking any of that.
Well, I have one of those too.
Oh, yes.
And they are
And, you
a
know,
joy.
my mum took my nan to Greenham Common, for heaven's sake, you know? I didn't go because I didn't at that stage agree that we should get rid of nuclear weapons. You know, she brought me up to think for myself. So my nan and my mum are at Greenham Common and I'm not, you know? So yes, we've been quite something.
Okay, well, we'll let you off the sofa and back out into the world, whatever it brings in the few days ahead. It's going to be a marathon, whichever side or party or element you're
It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard.
But thank you for joining us.
Not at all. Thank you for inviting me.
Great to have you on Ask a Woman. Thank you.